Hello and a very good day. I am Elma Melissa along with my partner Choi Yiling from Group 7 would like to introduce the possible hazard during poisoning at the oil palm plantation. This video is divided into four main parts, which is the introduction of poisoning at oil palm plantation, meaning of high-rate form and measure controls. Oil palm is one of the major crops contributing to national food consumption. However, weeds continue to constrain the production of oil palm. Weed management is highly reliant on herbicides, and we need a proper procedure in handling the poisons.
Do you know what is high rank? High rank is hazard identification, risk assessment, and risk control. The purpose of hazard identification is to highlight critical operations or tasks which will risk the health and safety of employees. Risk assessment is to analyze the possibility of injury or harm if exposed to a hazard. Risk control is a measure that eliminates or reduces the harm to a person if exposed to a hazard. For risk assessment, we can calculate relative risk using this formula, where L is likelihood and S is severity. We can rate likelihood and severity according to this table. By using this table, we can determine the risk level easily. Red color indicates a high risk, which requires immediate action to control the hazard as detailed in the hierarchy control. Yellow color indicates medium risk that requires a planned approach to control the hazard, and temporary measure is required. Green means a low risk, which is acceptable and further reduction may not be necessary. This is hierarchy of controls. Elimination is the most effective by physically removing the hazard, followed by substitution, which is replacing the hazard. Engineering controls, which isolate people from the hazard. Administrative controls that change the way people work. And the least effective is PPE, personal protective equipment.
Move on to the high-rate form, especially before the activity involve the transportation of chemicals. Chemicals are brought from factory to the plantation, and it could cause chemical spillage, which leads to skin corrosion. This is most likely to happen, and it is a serious issue to human health. The risk control that should be taken into consideration is workers must wear PPE and use suitable cuts with high edge. Slip and fall is also one of the hazards that is most likely to happen that could cause injuries. However, it is negligible as the injury that occur might be a light injury. Safe working procedure is recommended in controlling the risk and as well as cleaning up the workplace and wearing boot with a non-slip shoe. Next is the biological hazard that includes bees that bite and sting. This risk is possible to happen with a minor severity. The proper way to avoid stings is by removing the hives and making sure to cover all exposed skin. Lastly, the activity that can risk the workers is when mixing the chemicals that involve chemicals which leads to fatal injuries. Workers are most likely to be exposed with chemicals and poison with a fatal severity. The best way to reduce the risk is by wearing PPE, and every worker should learn a proper chemical management before coming to work.
The routine involved during this activity is spraying poison. The first hazard that can be identified is biological hazard due to snakes and bees, which can cause poisoning. It is possible to happen and can cause single fatality, thus having a high risk level. The hazard can be eliminated by destroying or removing the nest or by covering exposed skin. The second hazard identified is the environment, which can cause heat stress. Although it is possible to happen, the severity is negligible. Therefore, the risk level is low. To improve it, personal protective equipment can be considered. Drinking water can be allocated nearby the plantation as well. The third hazard identified is slip and fall, which is most likely to happen. and can cause minor injuries. The risk level will be medium. To lower the risk level, safe working procedures can be applied. Next, keep path clear and put hazard signs at potential falling positions. There are some hazards identified after the activity as well. Firstly, flammable chemicals. It might occur at some time in the future and cause serious but non-fatal injury. Thus, the risk level is medium. The risk controls that can be applied are separating poison according to its type and storing them in a safe place. Besides, chemicals are poisonous and may cause contamination. It has a medium risk level. The measures that can be taken are to keep street clothing and work clothing in separate lockers and ask workers to take a shower at the end of the shift.
The major controls that must be taken into consideration are saving working place, having a proper attire like PPE for every worker. Next is chemical management is important so that people will be alert with the poison that they are handling. Furthermore, safety at the workplace is important to reduce the risk of any hazard occurring, especially during weight poisoning. Lastly, everyone must have a good hygiene practice by making sure hands are kept clean to avoid any contamination. These measure controls are important to reduce the likelihood of hazard occurrence as well as reducing the risk assessment into low risk level. As the conclusion, a correct and a systematic procedure at the oil palm plantation is important to avoid any risk. Safety measures in poison management which also need to be emphasized to ensure human health and preserving the environment.